You stop and ask yourself, where does true power reside? Is it in the applause that follows your every word, in the ceaseless motion of your days filled with others, or in the tangible marks of achievement catalogued by society's unrelenting gaze? The world, with its clamor and relentless demand for presence, tempts you to believe that power is something measured externally, by the number of connections, the weight of accolades, or the visibility of your influence. Yet, paradoxically, many who chase this external power find themselves hollow, adrift in a sea of noise that drowns the voice of their own soul. Have you ever noticed how, despite being surrounded by people, you can feel utterly powerless? How the constant flood of distractions and expectations leaves you fragmented, each moment slipping through your fingers like sand? This is not weakness. It is the illusion of power built on unstable grounds. The moment you seek validation from others, you lose sight of your own light. The sanctuary you build in silence is where your spirit finds clarity, and it is there, alone, unadorned, and unshielded, that your true power begins to stir. Solitude is often mistaken for loneliness, but they are not the same. Loneliness is a void, a lack imposed by absence. Solitude, however, is a choice. It is the deliberate withdrawal from the world's distractions to stand face to face with yourself. This is not an escape, but a confrontation, a sacred encounter where the noise falls away and the essence of your being emerges. You stop seeking strength from the outside and begin to cultivate it within. In solitude, you discover not emptiness, but a reservoir of resilience and authenticity that social approval can never grant. Consider the wisdom of the Stoics, those ancient architects of inner fortitude. They teach that power is a matter of the soul's sovereignty, a dominion over one's own thoughts, desires, and fears. Marcus Aurelius, in the solitude of his mind amid the turmoil of empire, found a wellspring of strength that no external force could diminish. To embrace solitude is to follow this path, to find in yourself a steadfastness untethered from the shifting tides of circumstance. Yet, the world battles this truth at every turn. Noise is mistaken for life. Distraction masquerades as fulfillment. You are bombarded with messages that equate presence with popularity and busyness with importance. In this relentless pursuit, you lose the capacity to hear the subtle voice within. You forget that power is not the roar of the crowd, but the quiet certainty that you are whole, sufficient, and grounded in your own being. The moment you step away from the cacophony, you encounter a startling reality. Your mind, so long accustomed to external stimuli, resists the silence. It protests with restless thoughts and the temptation to fill the void with something, anything, that keeps you tethered to the familiar chaos. This resistance is not your enemy. It is the threshold of transformation. The sanctuary you build in silence is not a refuge from life, but a forge where your true self is tempered. In this solitude, you begin to peel away the layers imposed by expectation and habit. You stop identifying with the roles you play for others, the titles, the performances, the masks of confidence or acquiescence, and start to see yourself in raw relief. This confrontation can be unsettling, even painful, but it is necessary. The moment you accept this solitude, you begin to reclaim your power from the illusion of external approval. You begin to understand that power is not a prize to be won or a position to be claimed. It is a state of being. It is the calm command of your own mind and the clarity to act in accordance with your deepest values, regardless of the noise that surrounds you. You stop seeking to be seen and start learning to see yourself with unflinching honesty. This is the genesis of true strength. And when you cultivate this inner power, it does not isolate you. Rather, it prepares you to engage with the world from a place of unshakable foundation. The strength born in solitude allows you to navigate relationships and challenges without losing your center. You become less vulnerable to the shifting opinions of others because your worth is no longer contingent upon their recognition. This is the quiet revolution within, a transformation that begins not with grand gestures, but with the simple, intentional act of being alone and fully present. Solitude reveals that power is not an external acquisition, but an internal mastery. It is the ability to remain steadfast when external circumstances threaten to overwhelm, to hold your ground when everything around you seeks to pull you apart. You stop chasing echoes and instead become the source of your own voice. In this stillness, you find the strength to confront your fears, to accept your imperfections, and to forge an identity unshakable by the vicissitudes of fortune. The sanctuary you build in silence is where your spirit finds clarity, and clarity is the birthright of the powerful. Without it, you are buffeted by every wind of opinion and every storm of circumstance. With it, you stand unmoved, a beacon of presence and purpose. The moment you embrace solitude, you begin a journey not toward isolation but toward wholeness, a path that leads to the core of your being, where your true power resides. This is why so many remain trapped in the illusion of power built on connection and distraction. They have yet to discover the profound strength that solitude offers. In their endless pursuit of external validation, they forfeit the internal sovereignty that is their birthright. You stop and ask, what is the cost of this forfeiture? What is the price of never knowing the quiet depths of your own power? Solitude is not a withdrawal from life, but an immersion into it. It is the sacred space where your essence is revealed and where the foundations of your true power are laid. You stop running from yourself, and, in doing so, you begin to run toward the life you were meant to live, one marked not by the approval of others, but by the unwavering presence of your own strength. The moment you choose solitude, you take the first step on a path that few dare to tread. It is a path of courage and honesty, a journey inward that promises no easy answers, but offers the profound reward of self-mastery. Solitude is not emptiness. It is the space where your true power awakens. And when it does, the world no longer controls you. You control the world, not by dominance or volume, but by the quiet certainty of your own light. You stop and consider the false comfort you have long sought in the presence of others, the mistaken belief that constant company, ceaseless chatter, and the unending stream of distractions are the very anchors of security and confidence. How often have you convinced yourself that being surrounded by voices, opinions, and expectations creates a shield against uncertainty? Yet, this shield is thin, fragile, and prone to shatter when the noise fades, and you are left facing the quiet truth of your own being. The world whispers a seductive lie. That power is a collective possession, something magnified by the number of those who gather around you, by the volume of your social presence, or the currency of your connections. But this lie conceals a deeper truth. True power is not found in external validation or social approval. It is found in the ability to stand alone, unbowed and unbroken, in the silence where no applause echoes. You begin to see that the sanctuary you seek cannot be built on the shifting sands of others' opinions. You stop and ask, why does the noise feel necessary? Why does the prospect of solitude evoke such unease? The answer lies in the illusion that constant activity and company are the antidotes to vulnerability. In truth, they are often the very chains that bind you to dependency and distraction. You stop because you realize that only by stepping away from this noise can you confront yourself honestly, meet your fears, and build resilience unmediated by the approval or presence of others. When you allow yourself this withdrawal, you face the initial discomfort of silence. It is a discomfort that many evade, preferring the company of others to avoid the weight of self-examination. Yet, in this avoidance, you sacrifice the clarity and strength that solitude alone can provide. Solitude is not a punishment, but an invitation, a call to stand in your own light, to test the mettle of your character without the crutch of external affirmation. The moment you stop seeking security in others, you begin to grasp the essence of self-reliance. It is not a cold isolation, but a warm, unshakable foundation built from within. You begin to understand that confidence born from others' approval is fleeting and brittle, while confidence rooted in self-knowledge and acceptance endures storms and trials. The sanctuary you build in silence becomes a fortress, impervious to the shifting whims of social tides. You begin to discern the noise from the wisdom. The clamor of social expectation, the relentless barrage of opinions, and the seductive calls for approval are distractions that mask the deeper currents of your truth. You stop absorbing every external judgment as if it were a measure of your worth. Instead, you listen selectively, filtering out the echoes that do not serve your growth or align with your values. This discernment is a skill cultivated in solitude, where clarity is not drowned by the clatter of many voices. And when you cultivate this skill, you begin to navigate your relationships and engagements with a new awareness. You stop reacting impulsively to external pressures and start responding with deliberate intention. The power to choose your engagements, to set boundaries, and to protect your inner peace becomes a natural extension of your solitude. You stop being a vessel for others' expectations and become the architect of your own life. The sanctuary you build in silence is not a place of retreat, but a crucible of transformation. It teaches you that dependence on others for security is a mirage, and the real strength lies in standing firmly alone. You stop confusing busyness with importance, noise with life, and the presence of others with power. This realization is both humbling and liberating. It demands courage to embrace, for it requires the shedding of old habits and beliefs. Solitude reveals the raw contours of your character, unmasked by social facades. It exposes the cracks where dependence has seeped in and challenges you to repair them with self-reliance. The moment you accept this challenge, you begin to construct a life where your sense of security is not at the mercy of others' presence or absence. You stop seeking comfort in crowds and start finding it in the steadfastness of your own being. You stop because you recognize that true confidence does not roar. It is a quiet flame that burns steadily within. It does not demand constant feeding from external sources, but draws nourishment from the wellspring of self-trust. The sanctuary you build in silence nurtures this flame, shielding it from the gusts of social turbulence. You stop being swayed by the tides of approval and disapproval alike, and you begin to anchor yourself in the calm depths of self-possession. And when you reach this place, you realize that solitude is not the absence of connection, but the presence of strength. It is the space where the foundation of your character is laid, free from the distractions that dilute your focus and scatter your energy. You stop clinging to the illusion that being surrounded guarantees safety, and instead embrace the paradox that standing alone is the ultimate act of security. You begin to see that the false comfort of constant company is a veil that obscures your true power. You stop mistaking the noise for protection and start embracing the stillness that reveals your resilience. The sanctuary you build in silence becomes a beacon, a source of unwavering confidence that does not depend on external circumstance. It is here, in this deliberate solitude, that you cultivate the armor of self-reliance. You stop being a prisoner of social expectation and start becoming the master of your own destiny. This mastery is not achieved through grand gestures or public acclaim, but through the quiet, consistent practice of stepping away from the noise to stand firmly in your own truth. You stop feeding the hunger for external validation and begin nourishing the deeper hunger for authenticity and strength. The moment you embrace this solitude, you begin to reclaim your power from the distractions that have long held it hostage. You stop seeking refuge in crowds and start building resilience in the sanctuary of your own presence. This is not an abandonment of life, but an immersion into its truest form, a life lived with intention, clarity, and unwavering confidence. You stop because you understand that the path to true power is not paved with the approval of others, but with the courage to stand alone. You stop because you know that solitude is not a void, but a fertile ground where the seeds of self-reliance take root and flourish. And when you cultivate this solitude, you begin to embody a strength that no external force can shake, a power born in silence, sustained by presence, and revealed in the quiet certainty of your own being. You stop and lean into the initial discomfort that solitude brings, recognizing it as the crucible of transformation. When you first embrace being alone, it is not a gentle surrender, but a confrontation with resistance, restless thoughts crowding your mind, the urge to escape into familiar distractions, the subtle fear of facing yourself without the masks you wear in company. This resistance is the threshold of true self-discovery, a necessary passage through the shadows that obscure the deeper light within. Solitude reveals what the noise conceals. In the quiet, you begin to peel away the layers of superficial identity, the roles you have played, the expectations you have carried, the narratives you have told to shield yourself from vulnerability. These layers are comfortable yet confining, a kind of armor forged from external approval and habitual defense. The sanctuary you build in silence is where these armors are laid aside, exposing the raw contours of your soul, unvarnished and true. You stop identifying with the personas shaped by others' eyes and the fleeting applause of the crowd. In solitude, you meet the essence beneath these facades, the self that is often hidden even from your own gaze. This self is not always easy to confront. It carries the echoes of past doubts, unspoken fears, and unresolved wounds. Yet, it is in this confrontation that growth takes root. The moment you accept the solitude, you begin to sift through the debris of inauthenticity to uncover the enduring core of your being. The journey inward is neither swift nor painless. You stop seeking immediate comfort and instead embrace the discomfort as a guide. The quiet reveals the fissures in your character, the impatience, the insecurities, the shadows that have been long suppressed. These confrontations are not defeats, but invitations to refine your understanding of who you are. You begin to recognize that true power is forged not in ease, but in the deliberate facing of your imperfections. The sanctuary you build in silence is a space of both reckoning and renewal. It allows you to observe your thoughts without judgment, to witness your emotions without being swept away. You stop reacting impulsively to every internal disturbance and begin cultivating a steadiness that is rare in the tumult of daily life. This steadiness is the first sign of mastery over yourself, a mastery that solitude uniquely fosters. You begin to see that self-discovery through quiet is not a solitary spectacle, but an intimate dialogue between your present self and your deeper essence. The moment you engage in this dialogue sincerely, you start to discern the values and truths that truly resonate within you, distinct from those imposed by society or circumstance. This clarity is the foundation upon which authentic power is built. And when you reach this clarity, you stop being swayed by the superficial markers of success and approval. You begin to act in alignment with your inner convictions rather than external pressures. The sanctuary you build in silence becomes a compass, guiding your choices with a precision born of self-knowledge. You stop drifting with the tides and start steering your own course. Solitude reveals that the journey to self-mastery requires patience and courage. You stop expecting instant answers or easy transformations. Instead, you embrace the slow unfolding of insight that comes from persistent reflection and honest appraisal. The moment you accept this pace, you begin to cultivate resilience, not the brittle kind that shatters under strain, but the flexible strength that bends and recovers. The sanctuary you build in silence is also a place of deep healing. You stop hiding from the wounds inflicted by past betrayals, failures, and regrets. In solitude, these wounds are acknowledged and tended with compassion. This process does not erase pain, but transforms it into wisdom and strength. You begin to understand that your scars are not signs of weakness, but of survival and growth. You stop relying on others to fill the voids within and start learning to be whole in your own company. This wholeness is not an abstract ideal, but a lived experience, a presence grounded in acceptance and understanding. The moment you cultivate this wholeness, you begin to move through life with a confidence that no external accolade can provide. You begin to see that solitude is not a passive state, but an active practice, a deliberate choice to engage deeply with yourself. You stop fleeing from the silence and instead embrace it as a teacher. The sanctuary you build in silence becomes a laboratory where you experiment with your thoughts, emotions, and intentions, refining them with clarity and purpose. And when you engage in this practice consistently, you stop being a prisoner to the fleeting moods and distractions that once controlled you. You begin to cultivate an inner steadiness that sustains you through adversity and uncertainty. This steadiness is the hallmark of true power, the power to remain present and effective regardless of external circumstance. Solitude reveals that self-discovery is a continuous process, not a destination. You stop seeking a final answer or a fixed identity and instead embrace the fluidity of your evolving self. The sanctuary you build in silence allows you to remain open to growth, adapting to life's challenges with grace and wisdom. You stop fearing the unknown within and start exploring it with curiosity and courage. This exploration deepens your understanding of your motivations, desires, and limits. The moment you cultivate this understanding, you begin to navigate life with greater authenticity and purpose. You begin to see that the discomfort of solitude is the price of liberation. You stop resisting the silence and start welcoming it as the gateway to your true power. The sanctuary you build in silence becomes a sacred space where transformation unfolds, not with fanfare, but with quiet resolve. The moment you embrace this solitude, you begin to reclaim the parts of yourself that were lost in the noise and distraction of the world. You stop being defined by others and start defining yourself by the clarity and strength you cultivate within. This is the essence of self-discovery through quiet, a journey inward that reveals the unshakable foundation of your true power. You stop and confront the inevitable challenges that solitude reveals. Those moments when the mirror of silence reflects not just your strengths, but the shadows you have long avoided. In solitude, you meet the raw edges of your character, the flaws that stubbornly resist change, the fears that lurk beneath your confident facade, and the betrayals, both inflicted and endured, that haunt your memory. This confrontation is neither comfortable nor easy. It calls for a courage that is deeper than any external battle. The sanctuary you build in silence becomes a battlefield where your inner conflicts are laid bare. You stop seeking refuge in distraction or the comfort of others, and instead, you face these struggles head-on. It is here, in this solitary arena, that your emotional endurance is tested and strengthened. The moment you accept this solitary struggle, you begin to transform it from a source of weakness into a forge of resilience. You begin to understand that growth is not a linear ascent, but a series of confrontations with your own limitations. You stop fearing the discomfort of self-awareness and start embracing it as the necessary catalyst for change. The sanctuary you build in silence holds space for this difficult work, a place where you can wrestle with your past mistakes, acknowledge your fears, and slowly, deliberately, choose a different path. And when you embrace these challenges, you stop relying on others to soothe your wounds or validate your progress. Solitude teaches you that true healing and growth come from within. You begin to cultivate an inner strength that does not depend on external reassurance, a strength born from the disciplined practice of self-reflection and acceptance. The sanctuary you build in silence sharpens your mind, honing your ability to discern truth from illusion. You stop being deceived by comforting falsehoods or evasive rationalizations. Instead, you cultivate a clear-eyed honesty that cuts through self-delusion. This clarity is the foundation of emotional endurance, the capacity to withstand inner storms without losing your equilibrium. You stop running from the difficult emotions that solitude exposes, anger, grief, shame, and instead, you learn to sit with them, to understand their origins and their messages. The sanctuary you build in silence becomes a place of emotional alchemy, where pain is transformed into insight, and vulnerability becomes a source of strength. You begin to see that solitude is not a retreat from life's trials, but an intense engagement with the self. It requires you to take full responsibility for your inner world, to stand alone with your fears and flaws, and to choose growth over comfort. This responsibility is the essence of maturity and power. The moment you accept it, you begin to embody a resilience that no external hardship can dismantle. You stop allowing past betrayals, whether by others or by yourself, to define your present. In solitude, you confront these wounds directly, refusing to carry them as invisible burdens. You begin the slow work of forgiveness and release, not as a favor to others, but as an act of liberation for yourself. The sanctuary you build in silence supports this process, providing the stillness needed to untangle the knots of resentment and pain. And when you cultivate this emotional endurance, you stop being vulnerable to the whims of circumstance and the judgments of others. You develop an inner fortress, a mental and emotional citadel that shelters you from the storms of life. This fortress is not built of denial or suppression, but of acceptance and mastery. You stop seeking external comfort because you have learned to comfort yourself. The sanctuary you build in silence becomes a wellspring of calm and strength that you can draw upon in moments of trial. You begin to face life's uncertainties with a steady heart and a clear mind, knowing that your power is not contingent on external conditions, but rooted in your own presence. You begin to see that solitude's greatest gift is the sharpening of your emotional resilience. You stop avoiding the painful work of self-examination and start embracing it as the path to freedom. The sanctuary you build in silence is a crucible where your vulnerabilities are transformed into sources of power. You stop being at the mercy of fleeting emotions and reactive impulses. Instead, you cultivate the discipline to observe your inner landscape with compassion and clarity. This discipline is the cornerstone of emotional endurance, the ability to remain grounded amid life's inevitable upheavals. And when you master this endurance, you begin to move through the world with a quiet confidence that commands respect not through force, but through presence. You stop seeking to control external events because you have learned to control your own responses. The sanctuary you build in silence becomes the foundation of this mastery. You stop fearing solitude because you understand it as the essential space for growth and healing. You begin to cherish the moments alone, knowing they are the workshops of your character. The sanctuary you build in silence is not a prison, but a place of profound liberation. You begin to see that the challenges solitude imposes are the very trials that temper your soul. You stop resisting the discomfort and start welcoming it as the teacher it is. The moment you embrace these challenges, you begin to forge a strength that is unshakable, not because you deny pain or struggle, but because you face them with unwavering resolve. The sanctuary you build in silence becomes your greatest ally, a place where your mind is sharpened, your heart is healed, and your spirit is fortified. You stop running from your inner battles and start mastering them, transforming solitude from a state of isolation into the source of your deepest power. You stop and reflect on the nature of solitude, not as mere isolation or withdrawal, but as a deliberate alignment with your deepest values and principles. This is a solitude chosen, purposeful and intentional, distinct from the loneliness that arises from absence or neglect. It is here, in this chosen solitude, that clarity begins to emerge. Clarity not only about who you are, but about what matters most in your life. The sanctuary you build in silence is not an escape from the world, but a return to yourself. You stop because you realize that true power arises not from the clamor of external approval, but from the quiet assurance of inner peace. The Stoics understood this well. That power is born in the soul's mastery over itself, in the ability to prioritize what is within your control over the chaos beyond it. You begin to see that solitude, when embraced as an act of alignment, fosters this mastery by creating the space necessary for reflection and discernment. In this solitude, distractions fall away, and the noise of competing demands is silenced. You stop scattering your attention and start focusing it with precision on the principles that guide your actions. The sanctuary you build in silence becomes a crucible where your intentions are purified and your purpose is clarified. You begin to understand that power is not about exerting control over others, but about controlling yourself, your thoughts, your emotions, your choices. You stop chasing fleeting pleasures and external validations, and instead cultivate a steadfastness grounded in your core values. This steadfastness is a source of profound strength because it is immune to the shifting tides of fortune and opinion. The sanctuary you build in silence nurtures this strength by providing a refuge where your mind can rest and your spirit can recharge, free from the distractions that erode focus and resolve. And when you cultivate this inner alignment, you begin to act with intention rather than reaction. You stop being swayed by every passing impulse or external influence and start responding with deliberation and purpose. The sanctuary you build in silence becomes a compass that guides your decisions, ensuring they resonate with your authentic self rather than the expectations imposed by others. Solitude reveals that true power is an ongoing practice, a constant return to the foundation of your being. You stop treating power as a possession to be acquired and start living it as a state of presence and awareness. This presence is not passive but active, a vigilant guardianship of your inner world that enables you to navigate life's uncertainties with grace and resilience. You begin to see that solitude is not a retreat from responsibility, but a preparation for it. The moment you choose solitude deliberately, You prepare yourself to engage with the world from a place of strength and clarity. You stop being reactive and start becoming proactive, shaping your environment rather than being shaped by it. The sanctuary you build in silence is also a place of renewal. You stop exhausting yourself in the pursuit of external success and start replenishing your energy through solitude's restorative embrace. This renewal is essential for sustained power because it prevents burnout and cultivates resilience. You begin to understand that the most effective action arises from a well-nourished spirit. You stop confusing busyness with productivity and noise with progress. Instead, you begin to appreciate the value of measured, purposeful effort grounded in clear intention. The sanctuary you build in silence teaches you that sometimes the most powerful moves are those made in stillness and reflection rather than haste and distraction. And when you embody this clarity and focus, you stop being fragmented by competing desires and scattered energies. You begin to harness your attention fully, directing it toward what truly matters. The sanctuary you build in silence becomes the wellspring of your most authentic and effective power. You stop seeking to control every external circumstance and start mastering the art of aligning your inner world with your outer actions. This alignment is the essence of wisdom and strength. The moment you cultivate it, you find that your influence grows, not through coercion or force, but through presence, integrity, and purpose. Solitude reveals that the path to power is not a path of domination, but a path of harmony. Harmony between your values, your actions, and the world around you. You stop waging war against yourself and begin to foster peace within. The sanctuary you build in silence becomes a sanctuary not only for your spirit, but for your relationships and endeavors. You begin to see that true leadership arises from this inner alignment. You stop projecting power outwardly and start cultivating it inwardly. The moment you do, your actions gain authenticity and your influence deepens. The sanctuary you build in silence grounds you in a strength that others recognize and respect. You stop being driven by external rewards and start motivated by a deeper calling. This calling is the voice of your aligned self, clear and unwavering. The sanctuary you build in silence nurtures this voice, allowing it to rise above the clamor of distraction and doubt. And when you listen to this voice, you begin to live a life of purpose and integrity. You stop wandering aimlessly and start moving with intention. The sanctuary you build in silence becomes the foundation of this purposeful life, a life marked not by fleeting success, but by enduring fulfillment and power. You stop because you understand that the greatest power is the power to be yourself fully and authentically. You stop because you realize that solitude, when chosen mindfully, is the path to that power. And when you embrace this solitude, you begin to embody a strength that is both profound and peaceful, a strength rooted not in the approval of others, but in the quiet certainty of your own aligned presence. You stop and contemplate the fortress you are building within, the inner sanctuary forged in the quiet crucible of solitude. This fortress is not constructed of stone or steel, but of emotional and mental strength, a citadel of resilience that shields you from the turbulence of the external world. It is here, within this sanctum of your own making, that you gain control over your reactions, mastering the alchemy that transforms chaos into calm. The sanctuary you build in silence becomes the foundation of this inner fortress. You stop yielding to the whims of circumstance and begin to cultivate a steadiness that is unshakable. This steadiness arises not from denial or suppression, but from acceptance and mastery. A deliberate choice to meet life's storms with presence rather than panic, with clarity rather than confusion. You begin to see that solitude provides the space necessary to observe your thoughts and emotions without becoming enslaved to them. You stop reacting impulsively to every disturbance and start responding with mindful intention. This ability to regulate your inner state is the cornerstone of genuine power and freedom. The moment you claim this control, you begin to inhabit a realm where you are not the victim of circumstance, but the sovereign of your own experience. Solitude reveals the subtle dance between control and surrender. You stop striving to dominate every external event and start mastering the art of governing your internal landscape. The sanctuary you build in silence is a place where you learn to discern what is within your power to change and what must be accepted, This discernment is not resignation but wisdom, a recognition that true freedom arises from this balance. And when you cultivate this balance, you stop being tossed about by the tempests of emotion and opinion. You begin to anchor yourself in the calm center of your being, a place untouched by the chaos beyond. The sanctuary you build in silence becomes a harbor, a refuge where your spirit finds rest and renewal amid life's storms. You stop fearing solitude because you understand it as the training ground for this inner mastery. In solitude, you confront the turbulence within, learning to navigate the currents of your mind and heart with skill and grace. This mastery is not achieved overnight, but through persistent practice and unwavering commitment. The sanctuary you build in silence also becomes a shield against the distractions and demands that seek to fracture your focus and scatter your energy. You stop allowing external noise to penetrate your defenses and start cultivating an unyielding clarity that preserves your inner peace. This clarity is the light that guides you through uncertainty and complexity. You begin to see that the inner fortress is not a barrier isolating you from the world, but a foundation from which you engage it more fully and effectively. The moment you build this fortress, you stop being reactive and start becoming proactive, shaping your environment with intention rather than being shaped by it. You stop confusing strength with aggression or control over others. Instead, you embody a strength rooted in calm presence and self-possession. The sanctuary you build in silence nurtures this strength, allowing it to grow steadily and silently like the roots of a mighty tree that anchors it firmly to the earth. And when you embody this strength, you begin to influence the world not through force, but through the quiet power of your presence. You stop seeking to overpower external circumstances and start mastering your own responses. This mastery is the essence of freedom, the freedom to choose your path regardless of the storms that rage around you. You stop being a passive recipient of life's challenges and start becoming an active participant in your own destiny. The sanctuary you build in silence becomes the command center from which you operate, a place of strategic calm and clear vision. Here, you plan your moves with wisdom and execute them with confidence. Solitude reveals that the inner fortress is built brick by brick through consistent practice. You stop expecting sudden transformation and start embracing the slow, steady work of self-mastery. The sanctuary you build in silence is both the workshop and the refuge for this ongoing labor. You begin to see that true power is not displayed in grand gestures or loud proclamations, but in the quiet constancy of your inner state. You stop chasing external signs of strength and start cultivating the deep wellspring of calm that sustains you through adversity. And when you reach this place, you stop being vulnerable to the storms of life because you have become the eye of the hurricane, a space of stillness and control that remains untouched amid chaos. The sanctuary you build in silence is the fortress where your true power resides, a power that is both profound and peaceful. You stop fearing the unpredictability of the world and start embracing it as the arena in which your inner mastery is tested and proven. The sanctuary you build in silence is not a retreat, but a stronghold, a place where your spirit finds clarity, your mind gains control, and your heart cultivates courage. You begin to see that solitude is the essential practice that enables you to build and maintain this fortress. You stop avoiding being alone and start welcoming it as the source of your strength. And when you cultivate this solitude, you embody a power that is unshakable, not because you deny life's challenges, but because you meet them with an unyielding inner foundation. You stop and contemplate the quiet essence of leadership that solitude reveals, a leadership not forged in the glare of spotlight or the clamor of crowds, but cultivated in the stillness where resilience and clarity are born. True leaders are not those who seek constant validation or exert control through volume and force. Rather, they are the ones who carry their strength inward, nurturing it in the sanctuary of solitude before projecting it outward with calm determination. The sanctuary you build in silence becomes the crucible where leadership is refined. You stop chasing recognition and start cultivating the qualities that sustain influence over time: self-awareness, patience, and unwavering presence. This leadership is not a performance, but a responsibility, a quiet duty that demands courage to stand firm amid uncertainty and grace to navigate complexity without losing your center. You begin to see that solitude is not a retreat from the demands of leadership, but the preparation for them. The moment you choose solitude, you choose to cultivate the inner resources necessary to lead with integrity and wisdom. You stop reacting to external pressures and start responding with deliberate intention, grounded in self-knowledge and ethical clarity. The sanctuary you build in silence nurtures a resilience that is essential for leadership. You stop being swayed by the ephemeral tides of popularity or the shifting winds of opinion. Instead, you anchor yourself in a deep well of inner stability that enables you to withstand criticism, setbacks, and the inevitable solitude that true leadership entails. And when you embody this resilience, you begin to lead not through coercion or fear, but through the quiet power of your example. You stop needing to dominate conversations or command attention because your presence alone carries weight. The sanctuary you build in silence becomes the source of this commanding presence, a presence that inspires trust and respect without uttering a word. You stop confusing leadership with loudness or visibility. Instead, you recognize that the most profound influence often arises from the unseen work done in solitude, the reflection, the self-discipline, the cultivation of character. This unseen work is the foundation upon which all effective leadership rests. You begin to see that solitude teaches you to listen deeply, to yourself and to others. The moment you cultivate this deep listening, you stop imposing your will and start discerning the needs and potentials around you with clarity. The sanctuary you build in silence becomes a space where empathy and understanding grow, enriching your capacity to lead with compassion and insight. You stop fearing the isolation that leadership can bring because you understand it as a necessary part of carrying responsibility. In solitude, you cultivate the strength to stand alone when necessary, to bear burdens without complaint, and to make decisions that may be unpopular but align with your principles. The sanctuary you build in silence is also a place of renewal for the leader's spirit. You stop exhausting yourself in the relentless demands of leadership and start replenishing your energy through deliberate solitude. This renewal is not selfish but essential. It sustains your ability to serve others effectively over the long term. And when you nurture this balance, you stop being reactive to crises and start becoming proactive, anticipating challenges and preparing yourself to meet them with calm and clarity. The sanctuary you build in silence is the command center from which you operate, a place of strategic stillness and clear vision. You stop seeking to control every aspect of leadership and start mastering the art of influence through presence and example. This mastery is the hallmark of Stoic leadership, the ability to maintain equanimity amid chaos and to inspire others through steadfastness and integrity. You begin to see that solitude is the soil in which the roots of leadership grow deep. You stop neglecting this inner work in favor of external achievements and start investing in the cultivation of your inner life. The sanctuary you build in silence becomes the source of your enduring influence. You stop confusing activity with effectiveness and start recognizing that sometimes the most powerful leadership is the leadership that waits, listens, and acts with measured intent. The sanctuary you build in silence teaches you that patience and reflection are not weaknesses, but vital strengths. And when you embody this wisdom, you stop being driven by ego or ambition and start being motivated by service, to yourself, to those you lead, and to the principles that guide you. The sanctuary you build in silence nurtures this motivation, allowing it to flourish in quiet resolve. You stop fearing the solitude that true leadership entails and start embracing it as the necessary companion of responsibility. You begin to see that to lead well, you must first be at peace with being alone with your thoughts, your doubts, and your convictions. The sanctuary you build in silence becomes the foundation of this peace, a place where your spirit finds clarity, your mind gains focus, and your heart cultivates courage. You stop seeking external applause and start cultivating the quiet confidence that comes from knowing you lead from a place of authenticity and wisdom. And when you carry this confidence, you begin to influence the world not through dominance, but through the magnetic power of presence. You stop needing to prove yourself and start embodying the strength that commands respect effortlessly. You begin to see that the essence of Stoic leadership is born in solitude, a leadership that is steady, compassionate, and resolute. You stop mistaking noise for authority and start embracing the profound strength found in silence and self-mastery. The sanctuary you build in silence is not a retreat from the world's demands, but a preparation for them, a place where your leadership is forged in the quiet fires of self-discipline and reflection. You stop being reactive and start becoming the calm center around which others can rally. You begin to see that the greatest leaders are those who have learned to be comfortable alone because in doing so, they have discovered the inner wellspring of strength that sustains them through every challenge. The sanctuary you build in silence is the source of this strength, the wellspring from which your influence flows steadily and enduringly. You stop and arrive at the summit, the pinnacle where solitude and self-trust converge into the profound summit of true power. This power is not the fleeting kind celebrated by crowds or recorded in histories. It is the enduring strength born from being grounded and present within yourself, no matter the shifting tides of fortune or the clamor of external recognition. Here, at this height, you grasp that real influence flows from the stillness within, not from the noise without. The sanctuary you build in silence becomes the foundation upon which this summit is reached. You stop chasing the illusions of power that depend on circumstance, and instead, you cultivate an unshakable presence rooted in self-reliance. This presence is not loud or boastful but quietly commanding, an inner authority that requires no validation because it is born of intimate knowledge and acceptance of oneself. You begin to see that the summit is not a place of isolation, but a vantage point from which you engage the world with clarity and grace. The moment you reach this summit, you stop being swayed by the judgments or expectations of others. You move through life with a calm assurance, aware that your worth and power are inherent, not bestowed. Solitude reveals that self-trust is the crowning achievement of your journey inward. You stop doubting your intuition and begin to listen to the steady guidance of your own wisdom. This trust is forged in the quiet moments of reflection, the hard lessons learned in silence, and the unwavering commitment to stand alone when necessary. The sanctuary you build in silence nurtures this self-trust by providing a refuge from the distractions that erode confidence. You stop seeking external affirmation because you have found a deeper source within. This source is inexhaustible, a wellspring of strength that sustains you through uncertainty and change. And when you embody this self-trust, you begin to influence not by force, but by the magnetic power of presence. You stop trying to control outcomes and start mastering your responses. This mastery is the essence of freedom, the freedom to be fully yourself in every situation, unshaken by circumstance. You stop confusing power with domination or coercion. Instead, you realize that the highest form of power is the power to remain centered and effective regardless of external chaos. The sanctuary you build in silence becomes the anchor of this power, holding you steady amid life's storms. You begin to see that influence rooted in inner stillness is more enduring than any fleeting external success. You stop chasing recognition and start embodying the qualities that naturally draw others to you: integrity, calm, wisdom, and presence. The sanctuary you build in silence becomes the source of this magnetic influence. You stop fearing solitude at this summit because you recognize it as the wellspring of your strength. You embrace it not as a burden, but as a gift, a sacred space where your spirit is nourished and your power renewed. The moment you embrace this solitude fully, you stand in a place of profound peace and confidence. The sanctuary you build in silence is not a place of retreat, but the launching pad for your most authentic and effective life. You stop hiding behind distractions and start living with intention and clarity. This clarity allows you to navigate complexity with ease and to act with decisive purpose. And when you live from this summit, you begin to embody a power that transcends circumstance, a power that is quiet yet unassailable, gentle yet formidable. You stop chasing after external measures of success and start defining success on your own terms, rooted in the unwavering presence of your true self. You begin to see that the journey to this summit is the journey of a lifetime, not a path to be rushed, but a commitment to be lived daily. You stop seeking shortcuts and start embracing the discipline of solitude, self-reflection, and self-mastery. The sanctuary you build in silence becomes the constant companion on this journey. You stop being distracted by the noise of the world and start listening to the profound wisdom that arises in stillness. This wisdom guides your steps and illuminates your purpose. The moment you heed this inner voice, you move through life with a clarity that is both empowering and liberating. You begin to see that true power is not a destination but a state of being, an ongoing alignment with your deepest truth. You stop striving to become someone else and start embracing who you are fully and without reservation. The sanctuary you build in silence nurtures this embrace, allowing you to stand tall in your authenticity. You stop fearing the solitude that accompanies this power because you have learned that in solitude, you are never truly alone. You are accompanied by the steady presence of your own strength and wisdom. The sanctuary you build in silence is the home of this presence, a sacred space where your spirit finds clarity and your power is renewed. And when you embody this power, you begin to live a life marked by resilience, purpose, and profound peace. You stop being swayed by external forces and start moving with the quiet certainty of one who has reached the summit, not through conquest or accumulation, but through the mastery of self and the embrace of solitude. You stop because you understand that this summit is not the end but a new beginning, a place from which you can engage the world with true influence and enduring strength. The sanctuary you build in silence becomes the source of this power, a wellspring that flows eternally from within, lighting the path forward with unwavering clarity and grace.